Now call Minister Simon Coveney, and I understand Minister is sharing with Deputy Sean Kine and Deputy Liam Turner.
Yeah, thank you.
10 minutes,
and,
Minister.
Yeah, you might let me know when about 9 minutes are up, if that's okay. Thanks. First of all, I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to speak on this bill, and I want to say actually that I think that this debate that we're having here in the House, which is really the start of a national debate on this issue in the context of the referendum that's upcoming in a few weeks' time, on the 10th of November. I think it's disappointing that it's not getting the kind of focus in terms of broader coverage that I think it deserves. I think if you listen to an awful lot of the contributions to this debate, and I have done, they all are hugely relevant to the issues that we need to be discussing, both in the context of the upcoming budget, as well as this referendum, as well as the broader agenda around the programme for change for children that the government is advocating. And we have members of this House, I think, who are genuinely representative of all sections in society. Some have been foster parents, some have brothers and sisters who have been adopted, others have been social workers, others have had brothers and sisters in foster care, and so there's a broad range of experience and indeed, I think, real commitment to this issue that I think deserves to be understood and to be covered in terms of informing the broader public debate on this issue. And I think it's unfortunate that we haven't had that space in recent days, given other political scandals and coverage, which in my view are not as relevant in any sense to the common good as this debate is. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to congratulate my colleague, Minister Fitzgerald. I have to say that I think from the very outset of this government, the fact that that the Taoiseach chose to appoint a Minister for Children, which is very much in the programme for government, and it's a government decision, I think was a statement of intent that we want to do something real. And I think the choice of that minister was also a statement of intent. Someone who has been a fearless advocate for women's rights in the past and now for children's rights. And I think at the end of our term in government, when it's being assessed, some of the real fundamental change that will have been delivered by this government will come from this new department and this minister. And I think time will show that. In terms of the debate itself, I'm pleased that all parties in this House have chosen to welcome what we're trying to do in relation to this referendum. This is about fundamentally shifting the legal framework and protection, if you like, that is in the Constitution since its inception around balancing the rights of family and the family structure and parents now with the rights of children in their own right. And I think that this should have happened before now, but I'm glad that it is now happening. And when the Constitution was written, the attitude towards family and the support provided for through the family for children was very different. And this is about modernization, the modernization of our Constitution in a way that is learning from the shameful mistakes that have been made, that have resulted in the kind of tragedies that Deputy Ellis and Deputy Stanley have mentioned in their contributions, that, to be honest with you, were preventable in many cases, and are a scar, really, on the history of a country that does make very strong statements in relation to the cherishing of our children in various contributions that have been made during the setting up of this state and since then. And so what we're at here is trying to get a difficult balance right, trying to put a wording together to actually sum all of that up so that we can first and foremost provide real clarity for judges who need to make difficult and sensitive decisions in the future, and also give real direction to social workers who face extraordinarily complex problems, and that we would prioritise the right of an innocent child, in most cases, in that decision-making process and in that legal determination in terms of whether we would intervene, how supports would take effect, how we can actually balance the rights, often in very emotive and difficult and vulnerable situations for both parents and children, of vulnerable children, in terms of life-changing decisions and life-changing interventions that the state has a responsibility to make and has failed to make, with tragic consequences in the past. And in many ways, this failure has been supported by a legal system in the past. And that is why it is so fundamentally important, in my view, to actually change the Constitution here, rather than try and deal with this through primary legislation. Although what we are doing in the Constitution, of course, needs to be backed up with primary legislation, which is exactly what's happening in relation to the Adoption Amendment Bill that Minister Fitzgerald has also introduced and published as part of this debate. So I think if you look at the wording itself, and it is, of course, possible to make a strong case that we should be doing more in relation to the wording. But this is about trying to get a balance, and trying to balance the need for clarity in our Constitution around prioritising a child in a vulnerable situation, and at the same time then recognising the role of legislation to actually back that up, to protect all of the other rights that I know other deputies are actually looking for as regards children. And also backing that up with the decision-making process at budget time and at other times of the year, so that we can try to deal with the kind of gross child poverty that does exist in Ireland, that has been highlighted by members of this House in quite graphic detail. That is a responsibility of government to do all of those things. And what I would say to colleagues here on both sides of this House is that don't expect that in a wording to a constitutional change we can do all of those things in that one decision. This is about a wording in a constitution that gives a clear direction both to judges and to policymakers in terms of what they need to do, and that needs to be followed up then by other required actions from government and from the Department of Children around primary legislation to actually solidify and clarify and give the details of the rights that we need to protect for children. And also, of course, to back that up at a very difficult and tight time from a budgetary point of view, where ministers have to operate under expenditure ceilings, which is not something that we're used to actually find a way of prioritising and allocating resources in as far as possible to be consistent with what we're doing in terms of the legislation that we're introducing, and indeed the wording that we are advocating that the public in Ireland would support on the 10th of November.
Just a minute left.
Thank you. Can I say this? There are, and you will have heard these statistics by a number of speakers, there's about 30,000 cases reported each year of concern around the welfare and vulnerability of children. That is a huge number of cases. We need both the resources and the legal framework to be able to deal with that as effectively as possible. We need to take on difficult judgments around legislation. For example, the role of foster care parents in Ireland, to try and facilitate the transition for children and for their benefit from foster care into long-term adoption, so that vulnerable children who have been failed by their parents over a long and measurable period can actually have the benefit of a stable, loving and lasting relationship within a family structure that wants to care for them. And that has not been catered for in law in Ireland in the past. And as a result, we have seen cases where parents who desperately wanted to adopt children that they love and care for have been prevented from doing that. And at the same time, we need to balance the obligation towards the child in that type of situation with, of course, the rights of parents also, who can turn their lives around and can and will try to take responsibility for their children again, having done that with the support and care of social workers and the state.
Thank you.
This is a difficult balancing act, but I am very pleased that parties in this House have decided to support what we're trying to do, and I hope that we'll get the kind of public debate that is needed in the build-up to the 10th of November, so that we can get the kind of result that, in my view, will result in a lasting benefit for very vulnerable children across the country.